Do you want Thune to serve another term as leader? Would you support him?
Well, I don't want to get into that necessarily, but
why?
I'll tell
a lot of people are thinking about it. This is a big issue.
Right, because I'd like to see the people that want to vote against it. I want to see the people, both Republican and Democrat, who vote against. I think it should pay a price during the election, for the election.
All right, well, I can't exactly say I'm surprised. I don't think any of us are, but it's now official that Republican Senate leadership has adjourned. They've gone on their August recess, their vacation, without having passed the Save America Act. Of course, we reiterated many times there was a path to get this done, even if they didn't want to abolish the filibuster. Many were pushing, including President Trump, the idea of passing at least elements of the Save America Act via reconciliation. And for whatever reason, at the last moment, the GOP Senate just didn't want to do it, whether it was a decision personally by John Thune or probably a bunch of members within the Republican caucus were not going to vote for it, which is to say they wouldn't even have the 51 votes needed to get this done. What a disgrace that is. And, I hate to say it, but that's basically it, because they're going to come back here in the middle of September. It's going to be election season. Obviously, we don't know how the midterms are going to go, but let's assume that Democrats at least win one chamber of Congress. Maybe they win the House or something like that. That's it. There's no way you're going to pass the Save America Act. And so this is a generational fumble. A really once-in-a-generation opportunity here has been squandered. It's quite a disgrace. We'll talk about it. Now, I don't want it all to be doom and gloom in this video, because it's worth noting that some political battles were won here. For example, earlier this morning in a basically 5 a.m. vote or something like that, Todd Blanche was confirmed as Attorney General, which is good news. So they did some things good. Okay, I'm not going to say it's a total F-, but maybe something here like a C-, because once again, the RINOs are leaving town without having done their fundamental job of passing the Save America Act. And even if they pull off some type of miracle in the month of October, not sure that's going to be in place for the midterms. And again, I doubt that's even going to happen, because half of Congress is going to be gone campaigning. So is this really something we can realistically say will happen when they all get back? By the way, why is the recess now being extended from 4 weeks to 5 weeks? I thought it's supposed to be a month. Now they're just adding an extra week to basically say, hey, here's our big excuse to not get anything done. And what's most hilarious of it all, what's arguably most insulting, is that John Thune's trying to leave on a high note. He's basically said in his final speech this morning that this is a massive victory for the Senate GOP. Why? Because we confirmed the Attorney General. Yeah, when your party controls the Senate, that shouldn't have been nearly the political fight that it was. Arguably, you could really make a case, if we want to get conspiratorial about this, did Tom Tillis and John Cornyn hold up Todd Blanche on purpose because they knew that would buy time, that would prevent any reconciliation hopes for the Save America Act? I don't know, that's a possibility, but okay. You confirm the Attorney General. Again, good job. Should never have been that hard to begin with. And their big thing, too, is they passed a new Lindsey Graham honored package of Russia sanctions, to which I say, okay, thank you for that, I guess. I don't know. But, the point is, the thing we care, the thing that actually affects elections in our country, right, is the Save America Act. What do you do? Well, let's talk about it, though. First, guys, do us a favor. As usual, if you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That's the best way to support our work. It also ensures you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, here is John Thune, completely lacking self-awareness, proclaiming this to be a massive victory. I kid you not.
The Lindsey Graham Sanctioning Russia and Iran Act, giving the president critical tools to bring peace to Ukraine. We also approved another slate of 74 Trump administration nominees. We've been working our way through our to-do list and delivering real wins for the American people.
Yeah, as the Senate begins its 5-week recess, Majority Leader John Thune is hailing their final day in session as a massive victory. That's to be determined.
Does he really believe we're that stupid? And I find it even more hilarious that, for example, John Thune is applauding the Trump nominees that have been confirmed as a huge victory for the Senate, given that, if you paid attention to that whole nominee issue, actually, it's been kind of historically slow, right? The rate at which the Senate's getting it done, they're slow walking everything. let's not forget what just happened with the Attorney General, right? All the grandstanding, all the time we had to waste fighting on that when it should have been as easy as that when you just control the Senate to begin with. Of course, Trump put out this post calling out John Thune because he, during this term, has wanted to do recess appointments. He's had exactly 0 because the Senate refuses to do it. And you compare that to other Republican presidents. President Reagan, for example, was allowed to do 240 recess appointments. Bush 1, 77. Bush 2, 171. President Trump, 0. But guys, we confirmed Trump's nominees at a snail's pace. This is a huge victory. He really does believe that we're stupid here, right? And again, sanctions on Russia. Yeah, that, you know, we were asking for election integrity in our country, and all we got was this stupid sanctions package that's basically gonna make no tangible difference in our lives. Okay, right? Thank you for that. But anyway, so here you got the official news. Majority Leader John Thune forced the Senate into August recess without the Save America Act. Mike Lee and Ashley Moody were among those yelling at the top of their lungs objecting, but ultimately John Thune said, I move to adjourn. Again, why is it now a 5-week recess? How did that happen? Not exactly sure, but I guess according to him, the Senate GOP's been doing stuff at a record rate. Of course, that's hilarious. Now, it was just yesterday that you did have some of the better, generally Republican senators calling for this reconciliation attempt, right? Let's try to get the Save America Act done. Let's at least try to get elements of it done. So my question is, of course, what happened to that?
You know, I don't know, John. I mean, I honestly don't know. Everybody, I don't know what's in people's heads and what's in people's hearts. Here's what I do know. If we do reconciliation, we don't need any Democratic votes. We do have to get the permission of the parliamentarian.
Yep.
But there's a way to craft a voter integrity bill, the so-called SAVE Act, that I believe can pass muster with the parliamentarian, but we don't know unless we try. Now, Senator Thune, to his credit, is going to bring that to a vote on the floor. We're going to have a chance to do what we call get on the bill. I'm obviously going to vote yes. I think all Democrats will vote no. I don't know how many Republicans will vote no, but probably some will.
All right. Well, in the meantime, we will all stay dazed and confused about what's going on in the Senate.
Yeah. Well, update, they didn't try. An attempt was not made. Rather, Republicans decided to take their ball, run home, go on vacation instead. And as Sean Kennedy hinted, if this is possible via reconciliation, then what is the problem? The problem is apparently we don't actually have enough Republican votes in our own caucus. Obviously, the Democrats enjoy, fraudulent elections. That's kind of something that is well established about their party. But why is it the case that within the GOP, how could that even be true that we don't have the votes? You may remember, by the way, that when we were passing via the filibuster, right, the Save America Act got more than 51 votes, okay? So basically, unanimously, the Senate GOP at least claims that they agree with the principles of the Save America Act. Okay. And then they basically sat there and said, well, we can't get it done because of the filibuster. And this is what's very telling, too. You are now presented an alternative path that basically says, here's how you can do this without the filibuster. And what do Republicans end up doing? Saying, oh no, we don't want to pass it via reconciliation. So what is really being communicated there? Republicans may give lip service to the Save America Act, but they don't want it to actually go into practice, which is kind of the entire point. This is why I often have said the filibuster is not even like a real thing, okay, which, by the way, it's not in the Constitution or anything, but it's more or less an excuse for the Senate to just not do stuff, right? Because they use it as this big excuse. Oh, that's how the rule works, the parliamentarian. We're saying, hey, let's figure out a way to get it through reconciliation. Oh, suddenly they don't want to vote for it. What's going on there, right? And why won't John Thune bring this fully into a whole reconciliation package that will actually hit the Senate floor? Well, President Trump has his own theory on this, which I think, frankly, makes perfect sense. And that's that actually, if there was a public vote on this from the Republican caucus, of course, the Republicans who'd have to go on the record saying they did not support the Save America Act, which is really what this is about, would be punished at the ballot box. Which Trump is basically arguing here, right? that more or less John Thune is protecting the rhinos in his caucus from having to deal with the heat of, hey, I oppose election integrity deep down at my core. I think makes perfect sense, by the way, as a theory.
Should he put it up for a vote either way?
Yeah, I would, because I'd like to see the people that want to vote against it. I want to see the people, both Republican and Democrat, who vote against, because mostly it's Democrats. I mean, we have most Republicans, in all fairness. We'll have a few. We'll be, like a couple short or maybe one short, which we shouldn't be any. What Republican is going to vote against it?
I could tell you there's a couple.
I know the new ones. You don't have to tell me. I know the ones, and I find it hard to believe. I think it should pay a price during the election, for the election.
Yeah, well, then in that case, I think the question becomes very simple, doesn't it, folks? Who is John Thune protecting? We'd like to know. Can we get names? Can we get a list? We probably, granted, have a good idea of who some of those people are, but we'd like to know. And why is he protecting them? Well, it probably makes perfect sense that although thus far the excuse has been what? The Democrats, the filibuster, we don't want to do that. But hey, the Republicans want the Save America Act, but we can't convince the Democrats that, yes, actually deep down, there's a bunch of Republicans who don't care much to see it passed. And that's why they won't take this to the floor for a real reconciliation vote, right? We have to put something on the line, not just blindly voting yes, because you know that it's not going to pass anyway because of the filibuster. And that's the entire thing. And by the way, what kind of indictment is it on John Thune? That we have an issue here as basic as, yes, election integrity, election security, right? It's not something that I think the Republican base finds to be particularly controversial. In fact, Americans in general don't find it to be controversial. We've seen those polls. But that he can't even unite the whole caucus he has behind the Save America Act. See, it's one thing to say, the Democrats, that's my excuse. But when you, as the Senate leader, can't whip up the votes from your own caucus, that, of course, means what? You yourself are either a failed leader or a malicious leader, right? You just don't care. If we're going to be nice, it would suggest that John Thune is incompetent and he sucks at this job and he shouldn't be the Senate leader, because the entire point of him being there is so that he can get the Republican caucus united. And you probably haven't been paying attention, but thus far, he's been doing a pretty awful job at that. Which is exactly why, when Trump was asked in the same interview whether he would support John Thune as the Senate leader for another term, he leaves it quite intentionally ambiguous, which is basically saying, hey, the more you fail to do your job, the more I'm going to turn against you, which is obviously perfectly fair.
Do you want Thune to serve another term as leader? Would you support him?
Well, I don't want to get into that necessarily, but
why?
I'll tell
a lot of people are thinking about it. This is a big issue.
I get along with him. It's unfortunate that he doesn't have the votes.
But do you actually get along with him?
I do.
But you clearly disagree. I mean, you have big disagreements.
I do have disagreements. I believe strongly in terminating the filibuster. And by the way, getting Save America Act approved immediately.
The Democrats would do it too, though, right? They'd get.
Well, they're going to do that. They're going to do that. If they get in, they're going to do it very quickly. I mean, you're wrong on that one. As long as I know that they're going to do that, you do it. We would get, in the next 2.5 years, we would get things that nobody ever dreamt of. We would be in office for the next 100 years. And I'll tell you what, if they get in, I may be the last Republican president.
Yeah. Now, look, in total fairness, I understand that it's popular to hate whoever's in charge. And I totally acknowledge that being the Senate leader, especially in that institution, is particularly difficult. But compare him, for example, even to Mike Johnson, who I'm not saying by any means is a perfect speaker, but he does seem to, when he needs to at least unite his own caucus, does a much better and more competent job of that than the Senate. Now, I understand the Senate on many levels is more of an institution, so it's kind of harder to get these old, sleepy, geriatric Bush Republican rhinos to play ball. But still, regardless, if you can't do that, then I think objectively, you do kind of go down as a failed Senate leader, right? You're someone who's not able to do their job. And again, I'm not someone who immediately, the moment you get a new leader, says, fire that leader, he sucks, because again, that's very easy or popular to do. But I do, for example, look at, hey, he really slow walked those Senate nominations. Should have been done a lot faster. Okay, he did it, fine. I'll give him a C. I'll give him a passing grade on that. But especially the Save America issue, he entered, we pointed this out for months. If you go watch back all of our past videos on the Save America thing, we pointed out from the beginning, hey, why don't you try reconciliation? eventually that started to become idea that certain senators were entertaining. But John Thune, of course, has had this opportunity for about the last 3 or 4 months. He kind of slow walks it purposely to the last minute, saying, oh, there's other things we have to do. We have to worry about the Russia sanctions bill first, because that's more important or something like that, right? And then now, here we are at the final point where they're about to go on recess, and then it's basically general election season. And he basically is sitting there trying to convince people, oh, we ran out of time. Sorry, we couldn't get it done, right? And what does that display to me? A fundamental unseriousness. It was not a priority for him to get this passed. And realistically, I would argue he didn't really even try that hard. Sure, I guess he brought it to a vote a couple times, but you know how this goes, right? You really want to get something done, and you care about that, and you're passionate about that, which you should be if you're a Republican. You figure out alternative means. You would be pursuing reconciliation. In fact, you probably would jump on that immediately because you know that, hey, we're never going to clear the filibuster. Democrats are not going to vote for this thing. Doesn't matter how many debates or stupid meetings that we have, which, by the way, Senator Kennedy has pointed out many times. I think we played that in a prior video, but he's basically saying, why are we sitting here having these stupid meetings with the Democrats trying to convince them when we know they're not going to vote for this, okay? We should be spending all this time figuring out, talking to the parliamentarian, how do we do reconciliation? And yet they just really kind of didn't do it, right? Entertained it, said, hey, maybe we'll vote on continuing forward with the process at the very last minute, the day before we're going on recess. But yeah, long story short, they're not serious about this. And that's the whole thing, right? Like in life, maybe at work or something, you guys can relate to this. You know, you don't really want to do something. You don't really want to get it done, but you're not going to say no. So you kind of BS people. I mean, you know, let's be honest, like probably at some point in your life, you've done something like that. Okay. Not endorsing it, but just saying. But, you know, you can also kind of detect that type of behavior out of people too, right? When they're saying yes, but then you follow up on them and saying, okay, status update. They're like, oh, don't worry, I'm working on it, but they're not. That's sort of what Senate Republican leadership has been doing with the Save America Act. And what a shame it is. We're going to once again pose the age-old question at this point. If you're Republicans, even if you're a corrupt establishment Republican who's really cynical and only trying to preserve your own power, is it still not self-beneficial to your own power to pass the Save America Act, right? It's one thing to say, oh, I think that bill on immigration goes too far and I'll lose independent voters. But in the case of Save America, we're advocating for the election integrity that, let's be honest, is probably going to give you an advantage in the elections because they're actually being run fairly, right? So what's the downside? What do you have to lose even if you're not the biggest Trump guy as a Republican? But of course, I think the answer always goes back to that when you look at the old guard of the GOP, when you look at the George Bush class, the neocons, the RINOs, whatever you want to call them, I think properly understood, what we ought to define these people are in many ways is controlled opposition, right? That's sort of the whole point that they play, which is, yes, for several decades now, more or less, the conservative movement has perpetually been taking L's, right? We've been losing. The kind of rise of Trump was sort of the moment that steered us out of that mentality, but that's been the whole thing, right? And all that happened is the conservatives would lose, they'd get steamrolled by the left, and then they'd sit there and like complain about hypocrisy or double standards, right? But never really actually having the power to enact anything. But what's the point of controlled opposition? You're letting the communists take over America, but you're standing there to make it seem like, hey, it's a two-party system. Hey, you know, we're trying to push back on this, but we're intentionally adopting very bad, stupid strategies so that we keep losing and it's all kayfabe, but we're going to pretend that we're the opposition party. When you sort of break it down, that's what's going on right now with the Republicans, right? They'll sit there and say, we support election integrity because we're the conservative party, but then they don't actually really fight to do election integrity. You see what I'm saying there? So, you know, the faster, I mean, it's a slow process, don't get me wrong, but the faster that we can obviously replace the these controlled opposition characters in the Republican Party, the better. You know, it's just kind of unfortunate to watch. Now, make no mistake about it, this is not me saying boycott the midterms or something like that, because objectively it still can get a lot worse, right? C plus versus F minus there is a difference. But yeah, I mean, it's something that's just kind of disappointing. And whatever I say, it is going to tamper on some levels a little bit of voter enthusiasm. And forget voter enthusiasm, just election integrity in itself. Don't you want to have a secure election, Republicans, right? And they just won't do it. And, you know, it's the big mystery of the age. Why? Why are Republicans scared of election integrity? Anyways, guys, that said, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.